Hey folks, Pops here from Bourbon and Banter, and today we're excited to be at Jazz St. Louis, and we've got a great show for you today in the fact that we're going to step into year 2 of our review of StilL 630's experimental collection. So why don't you join us, pull up a chair, pour yourself a drink, and let's go. Today we're joined by David Weglarz from StilL 630, where David is the founder, head distiller, chief bottle washer, tour guide. Here he cleans things. I've actually seen him come out of the still in his bathing suit, scrubbing the inside of it. So he does a little bit of everything. David, welcome.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Right.
I'm sorry you had to see that.
That's right. Well, at least it wasn't a Speedo, so we've got that going for us. We're glad you're here today, and we're even more excited that you're now on year 2 of the experimental collection.
Yep.
Right? And for those who've been watching, last year we did a review each month as StilL 630 released a new spirit. And that was a lot of fun. But this year, 1, because our liver can't take it, and 2, because we thought it would be fun to have David involved in our reviews. We're going to do them on a quarterly basis. And we wanted to do it at the distillery, right? But David, being the frugal businessman that he is,
Shrewd.
Shrewd? Okay. Or heat cycling, maybe. Has no air conditioning in his distillery. So, just like in the old days,
right.
We're not going anywhere near there
craft.
during the summer, right? True to craft. So, we're going to do it today from the beautiful Jazz St. Louis, where we've been welcomed with open arms to come in, spend some time here, and shoot our video, have a little fun, maybe play a little piano, some bongos, things of that nature. And we want to give special thanks to Bob Bennett, who is helping us get into Jazz St. Louis. He also is a writer for Bourbon and Banter, so he's pulling double duty as well today behind the scenes. So thank you, Bob, for helping us out. But David, before we get into tasting today's bourbons, because that's what we're going to have today, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to found StilL 630?
I was always looking for what I wanted to do in life. I had a bunch of different jobs, from whitewater rafting guide to futures trader and a bunch of other things in between. And I stumbled into craft beer, which led me into the idea that hey, people are making craft spirits too. I happen to like spirits a little bit better than beer. So I thought that just everything clicked, the stars aligned. I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. I didn't know anything about it except that I liked it. And I figured if I'm willing to work hard enough, I can figure out how to do it. And so here we are, a little over 5 years later, and still in it, still working away.
Well, congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you.
I know that you throw a celebration every year, and
Yep.
to celebrate that milestone, I think that's pretty significant. What is the significance of 630?
It's got a few meanings for us. It's the day we were founded, June 30th. That's when we have our yearly anniversary party, 630 Day. Everybody's invited. It is also the serial number of our StilL, so StilL number 630.
Now, was that planned, or was that just happenstance?
Of course it was planned. The universe conspires in our favor. Most importantly, though, it stands for 630 feet, which is the width and the height of the gateway arch. Tied all together, StilL 630.
Okay, excellent. Now, I do believe I've seen photos where you've combined your current passion with your whitewater rafting passion.
Yes.
At one point in time. You want to tell our readers about that?
Yeah. What you're referring to is a couple years ago, I took some of our used barrels and built an old barrel raft out of it. And me and Big Jake, our distillery mascot / little buddy, who's been on some of our labels, we got in it and paddled down the Mississippi River, and we've got a pretty awesome picture of us on the barrel raft on the Mississippi in front of the arch at sunrise, 630 Day 2016.
Very awesome. Was that scary at all? I mean, being out in the Mississippi downtown?
A lot of those nights. I mean, we started up in Minnesota, and it took us a long time to get all the way down there.
You're like modern day Mike Veach with your own raft, right?
Right.
He gets on a riverboat, and you just get on a little raft.
It was just Jake and I, so the company for Jake was very bad. For me, it was wonderful.
Well, good thing he doesn't judge too much. You did put him on in front of a bottle, so.
Yes, I did.
He's
been on, I think, 5 bottles.
5 now? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
More than me.
Okay. Well, today we're here to talk about the experimental collection. And like I said, a lot of people who have been watching the reviews know a lot about it. But can you give us a really quick, kind of summary of why you created this series and what you're hoping to accomplish with it?
So we wanted to really do 2 things. One, first off, we want to find some of what will hopefully be our great recipes for the end of time, that we'll make for years to come. But we also wanted to bring all of our fans and everybody that supported us and anybody that's visiting on the first Friday of the month, come down to the distillery. We want your feedback. We're making the best spirits we can. I'm doing the best that I possibly can, making the spirits that I want to drink. I'm not our only consumer. Yourself and everybody watching, everybody else out there, we want to make what they want to drink. Like, we're trying to make the spirits that the people demand, and we don't know unless the people tell us what they want.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. Now, today, these three, this is the X, 13, 14, and 15.
Yep.
Okay. And what's unique and special about these three?
So we're in this whole series, we're doing single malt whiskeys, we're doing bourbons, we're doing barrel-aged gins, tequilas, apple brandy, spiced rum. Everything that's pretty much not vodka will come out of this series. And in the first year, we had a whole bunch of kind of different individual flavors coming out. And in this year, from the feedback from everybody, we've tried to theme up the quarterly releases. The first quarter of year 2 is bourbon. So we've got 3 different bourbons here, as you said, 13, 14, and 15. They're all, typical high corn, a little bit of rye, little wheat, little barley. These 3, we tried to focus on the barley aspect about it. So that's where the real difference lie in all 3 of these.
Okay, so this first one, I'm sorry, look at that, I get them in order. This first one, the X13, so this is
that's going to be
20% barley.
Correct. Okay. So we wanted to go a high barley. Most of the bourbons that we see on the market are high rye, high wheated bourbons. Okay. We decided to maybe there's a reason why nobody makes a high barley. Maybe it's a great idea that lends some unique flavors to make something different. So we've got 70% corn, 20% barley, 5% rye, 5% wheat.
Okay, great. And
all of our experimental barrels come out of 15-gallon barrels so that we don't have to age them for many years. All the bottles, 100 proof, 200 milliliters. We try to keep it all consistent. The real difference that we're trying to focus on are the ingredients.
Okay, and this one is aged for 13 months?
That's right.
All right, excellent.
And there's a little bit of difference in the aging time.
Okay.
We pull it based on where we like it at. Sure. So we're tasting it every month, and we try to pull what our best example of those flavors.
Okay. What I like about it is how you guys are keeping the barrel size, the proof, the char as consistent as possible.
Again, trying to isolate variables so that we can focus on just the 1 or 2, which is usually the ingredients.
Once again, I've said this in all my videos, and you and I have talked about it at length, is because you are using those smaller barrels and we're younger, there's always that little bit of that barrel presence that, for me, has almost become a signature for you guys.
Yeah.
And
I always cringe when you say that because I don't want it to think that we're just over-oaking stuff.
No,
but it's definitely an aspect that comes out of those barrels. It's an aspect,
right. And for me, I was even talking to Bob before we got here today about the reality of, you have to be able to look beyond that. And I think that's what I tell people with a lot of craft is, since not everybody has had the benefit to have things in barrels for 5, 6, 7 years, right? I've had your 5-year-old rye, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
You don't have that signature. So it's about looking past that.
Yes.
And that's why I find this series so fun, is it's there, and I have to tell people about it, but it's then looking for what is present beyond that.
It's a balancing act, I think, is what I'm hearing you're saying there, and that we've talked about, between appreciating what it is now and then using a little bit of your imagination where, okay, if you did it in a big barrel for another couple of years, how does that mature? What does that evolve into here? And so,
absolutely.
My general takeaway, and to really reduce it down, is if you like it here, it would get better over time.
Exactly.
So
absolutely.
So if you can get a winner out of a 15-gallon barrel, then you've really got something good on your hands.
I love it. It's, you've got the oak spice, but then some of those baking spices coming into it. Caramel, a little bit of a bready note to it.
The corn hides underneath and kind of provides a little bit base, but for me in this one, you really get those cereal notes. That kind of what I like to think of as the really nice aspects of that barley coming through.
And on the palate, what I find interesting is there's a very sweet sugary note, almost kind of like crystallized sugar on the tip of my tongue when I take my first taste.
Yeah, I get a lot of the dessert aspects out of there comes to mind in this, and I attribute that to the sugary aspect, as you just said.
No, absolutely.
This one was a surprise for me in here, the X13, because I didn't, mainly because lack of expectations, really. I was like, oh, let's try it and play around with it. And it's got a more of a sweetness than I'm used to, but obviously it's still young. Yeah.
and carries over. Again, with some of that oak, but I think it's fairly well balanced considering the small, young age, small barrel, the young age, and the finish of it. Once again, more baking spices, but those cereal notes even continue a little bit.
Yeah.
With a little, it's not a strong weedy bread type flavor, but there's a little bit of it there. But it's pretty well balanced for just being 13 months old.
The rye and the wheat it's interesting how it seems like they kind of buddy up, whereas the rye spice lends itself to kind of blending in with the corn aspect, I think, and the wheat, which we've gotten in our wheat trials and stuff, seems to be more of this really specific sweetness that comes in there, which can be nice, but it's sort of an icing-like flavor. To me, that wheatness grabs on and gravitates towards the barley note to really emphasize that kind of desserty sweetness, the icing sugary that you were talking about.
I think it's a great start.
That one's a fun one. It's got a little more smoothness than some of them do at 100 proof, but yeah, it's fun.
Okay. So then X14.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So that is the same 4 grains. So we've got high corn, little rye, little wheat, little barley. One of the aspects that I really enjoy in whiskeys, and it's not just because of Scotch, but it's obviously very present and notable in Scotch, is the smoked aspect, the smoked barley. Scotch typically being the peated aspect, right? We've been playing around, and one of the recipes that I'd like to find eventually is a really great smoked whiskey. Big, bold, but more of an American smoke. It might have some of that iodine peat, but we've looked at adding the smoke component to this one. So X14, 75% corn, 10% rye, 10% wheat, 5% smoked malt barley.
Okay.
That 5%, though, is comprised of 3 different smokes. That being applewood, mesquite, and cherrywood smoked malt barleys.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they add different notes. If you recall, those of us that have been along for the ride so far, X6 was applewood, 100% applewood smoked malt barley. X7 was 100% cherrywood, 100% mesquite smoked malt barley. X9 was 100% cherrywood smoked malt barley. So you got those. If you have them in your collection, you could go back and taste through them to get those specific notes. The reason why we did that in that first year was so you could have those as kind of base expressions. I know that taste and that signature. Now, what, if anything, do you pick up in the bourbon that we
Well, and that's the fun thing is if people don't drink their whole bottle, they've got that reference, right? They can go back.
And if you did drink your whole bottle, we still have some quarterly collections, 3 packs that you could re-up.
See, there's that marketing genius coming out, right? Absolutely. Well, when I tried this one in prep for today, this one really surprised me in terms of, especially with the nose. I mean, for this one, I loved it because there was just something about the smoke added in there that really changed it up for me. I mean,
especially coming straight off the 13 here, it's wildly different.
And what the thing for me is not that it smells smoky, right? It doesn't add that essence to me really, but it sort of brings out a little bit of like a creme brulee aroma to me.
Yeah.
And I had to double check myself when I was drinking it because it was really surprising. It was not something that I expected from this mix.
We get a lot more of the cherry nose popping off from the corn and the cherry wood malt in there. Yeah.
Well, now the fun thing is we've got all these next to each other. We can
go literally back and forth.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I recommend trying this at home.
You can pour more if you will as well.
That goes for us too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know the guy, right? What's interesting is when I nose to nose, the other one, the first one, I can actually for the first time really smell the corn. But I keep coming back to this one. This has just got a syrupy creme brulee like texture that I'm digging it, I have to say.
It's amazing to me, one of the things that we've kind of internalized and learned off of this is how much relatively small proportions of ingredients can have large ramifications, right? 5% smoke in there, but I mean, it drastically changes that nose on there. I get it on here and on the palate for sure, especially on that finish. It's a totally different kind of beast.
No, absolutely.
Because I think,
Now this one, like I said, I really enjoy the nose. So the flavor, the finish for me, little tannic on the end.
Yeah.
It feels real good right up to the very end. It just feels a little bit off, but once again, a little more age, a little bit more time.
and I attribute a decent amount of that. I'm not going to say everything, but a decent amount of it, obviously the small barrel, but really some of that smoked notes thins it out.
Okay.
And lends some more of the, what we call it kind of creosote, kind of the, I don't want to say ashy because that carries too many negative connotations, but it's got some other flavors in it. The aspects of the smoke are reminiscent of a lot of those tannic notes that I think. So to me, they kind of are very, if you had a flavor wheel, they're in that same way.
I know a guy with a flavor wheel.
Right?
So we can
so
look.
if you needed one of those.
Creosote, is that what I make my notes down?
That's what I would say.
Bob, we got to put creosote into the flavor wheel when we're done here. Okay. No, that was a lot of fun.
But again, at 5%, that smoke really expresses itself in there.
No, I mean, and I've enjoyed your other releases with the smokes. I mean, it's been kind of interesting to see how the different ones experiment. Yeah. And if we look at what, wild turkey, right? So they're messing with mesquite charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite smoke, but they're looking at the different woods, and it's very subtle in their case because they're going for mass appeal. So this is where, once again, this is the type of stuff you have to get access to if you really want to see, the difference that it makes in a noticeable fashion.
But you also touch on one of the other, I think, underlying ideas behind this series is that we're not trying to outbeam Jim Beam or Wild Turkey, example. We're trying to be true to ourselves and our craft and make something that's unique and most importantly, something that's very good, right? And we know that it's a long-term journey, and that's part of what this experimentation is about, is finding something that does set us apart, not for the sake of being different. It's good and delicious, and yet it happens to be identified. Like you could sit here and taste them both and go, that's still 630, that's the big brand bourbon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to dive into the X15.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one, and especially how the ages have been progressing here?
So the 14 was 16 and a half months. The X15 is 17 months, I believe. And just a little bit longer, that's 2 weeks more. But as I said, we are tasting these every month, trying to find out where is our favorite or what we think is the best expression of that spirit. It's myself and Indomitable Beard, Andrew Spa. He is basically we're the two tasters in there. And so we like this one at 17 months. The real difference between these two, 14 and 15, are almost identical. 14 has 5% smoked malt barley. 15 has 5% chocolate roasted malt barley. So we didn't put Hershey's Kisses in there or anything like that. It's a different roasting profile on the barley itself that gives it some chocolate notes.
Okay.
So I'll let you take it from here.
Wow. If you had handed this to me blind,
what would you have said?
It would have been I would have gone with sort of like a spice rum or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I mean, not the sweetness of rum, but just what smells like some sort of macerated spices added to it. I mean, I was at your place a year or so ago where you guys were highly intoxicated and tasting different.
You're going to have to be more specific.
Yeah, exactly. You had a bunch of macerations of different spices and things of that nature, trying to work on a spiced rum.
We were working on X10.
X10.
Which was our spiced rum.
Okay. And, those things were obviously very intense, and it comes back to you saying a little bit goes a long way, right? But
very much so.
Some of the things that I remember smelling, I pick up in this, and I couldn't tell you what they are because, once again, those things smell and then they taste different than they smell. So it's really hard to kind of do it. But yeah, I mean, I would not. This is not something I've ever gotten from a bourbon before.
Interesting.
I mean,
it's almost a sprucey note at first.
Yeah.
But
something with I think sprucey note's probably a good way. Almost like when you tear something, it's got the syrup coming out of it. The sap.
The interesting thing is if it follows through on the palate.
Wow, once again, that's really unique.
Yeah.
I mean,
unique is such a fun word, isn't it?
Well, no, I mean, it is. I mean, because it's where you start, right? Then you got to unpack it. So for all of you guys who are going to yell at me for using words like unique, or if I accidentally slipped in the word smooth, go take another drink. It happens. Wow.
Yeah.
It does carry through a little bit, but then as it starts to finish, you get almost like coffee.
So again, coffee is a great thing because it provides those roasty notes that you're getting out of it.
Right.
For me, on the finish, I start to get a little bit more like well done chocolate chip cookies in there. That chocolate aspect. I'm not saying that I taste them.
Well done, burnt.
Yes.
Okay.
Getting towards burnt. I don't feel like we've tasted 100% chocolate malt. That's burnt.
That's burnt.
This is not that.
There's a reason nobody does that. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's got to me that's the most accurate similarity metaphor, I guess.
Now, what would be fun? I mean, I think if there was more sweetness that pulled through, if you had more sweetness, perhaps from like the first one, could carry through and mesh up with that. That'd be interesting to see how they balance out. For me, once again, it gets a little bit too more to that roasty, toasty, bitter coffee type taste. But for me, I like this because it's so different, yet it's from a handful of ingredients that everybody knows.
Right.
Right.
It's like a different iteration of the same conglomeration. And that's at 5%. That's what blows my mind in this. And we waited 17 months to let that chocolate malt barley settle down and start to move away from being the lead singer. You know what I mean?
Well, what's interesting, I've had conversations with people before, and malted barley is so just kind of overlooked in mash bills as kind of, the catalyst, right? The catalyst ingredient, right?
Smell that one again.
And nobody really has given it a lot of thought.
And that was our idea for X13. And our answer was either A, they looked into it a long time ago and realized there's nothing there, so nobody does it anymore. Or B, everybody kind of got in this mantra of it needs to be a high rye or a high wheat bourbon, right? And barley is just a enzymatic vehicle.
Right. And that's what I meant by catalyst. Now, once again, I don't know if this would ever go mainstream, right? Because this is so unique, which is
Very
maybe
specific.
why some of the big guys who have probably run a lot of these tests, we're not saying they haven't, right? They've tried things, they've learned things.
Oh, yeah.
But once again, there's a lot of beers out there as well that I would never want to drink, but a lot of people love them, right? So
that's a beautiful thing in the spectrum of
you find
balance,
a unique,
right?
and you guys have the ability to play with that, whereas they can't.
Exactly.
Right?
That's our nimble craft nature. We're making it all from scratch, all right down the old hard days.
That's right.
And so we've got the ability to really fine tune and play with this stuff. And that's what the essence of the experimental series is about. We've got 3 different bourbons here that I think we just kind of tasted through and realized are very different from themselves with the same 4 basic ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more I taste this and I smell it. I remember coming in one time after you guys had done some gin stuff and you were still cleaning up the needles.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's almost kind of like there's a little bit of a gin hidden inside a bourbon.
To me, it's that sprucey kind of piney note that kind of comes off the rye sometimes,
now,
honestly.
What'll be interesting that I've got distillery, and I apologize, up in Colorado. That
I think there's more than one.
That uses, more than one. But it uses aspenwood.
Oh.
In his stuff, and he's well done and well produced, and we've written about it, and that's why I didn't write about it, and I've been there, but I totally forget about his name. But he's got a little bit of that essence too. It'd be interesting to put these 2 together and kind of taste them.
For sure.
But as you said, when you go back,
man,
to these other ones, the middle one, I mean, just
I went back to 14.
The nose,
is what I just
the nose on
right
14
now.
is just fantastic. Well, I mean, you said it's kind of the essence of what you're doing. And to me, this, once again, as people look at craft, and everybody has different opinions of it, to me, the essence of craft is very much this, is I don't want to go and have something that I can buy from Buffalo Trace or Jim Beam or, whatnot, because that's all great and that's all good, but I want to seek out the new experiences. And, I may not buy 12 bottles, right?
Yeah.
But I want to have the experience, I want to try it, I want to learn. It trains your palate, it trains your experience, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, who wouldn't like to have 12 people, come together and do this? I mean, like I mentioned,
Right.
you know, I have friends come over and we drink the other stuff, but then I'm like, hey, you need to try these. And we bring out the different collections and they can go through and they can sample and experience, because they're all the bourbons taste the same.
You're not a drunk, you're a researcher.
Well, absolutely, right. Drunk research and drunk history, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Now, these are fantastic, and I think it's a really fun way for people to understand that all bourbons are not the same.
Yeah.
All mash bills aren't going to taste the same, and
a lot
just
of
go out and
care
have fun.
and concern goes into them.
Absolutely.
But like we were saying, the big guys in our industry are making great stuff. My shelves at home are filled with most of their offerings, along with a bunch of other craft guys too. We're not trying to be just a novelty. So there's a real balance there, right? In that we don't, yes, we want to be something different. We want you to like it. You may not buy 12 bottles of one of these, but hopefully you buy more than 12 bottles of the one that we eventually settle on.
Right.
But that one that we settle on is unique and different, but also has its own merit compared to your Buffalo Traces or your Maker's Mark and stuff like that. So, yeah. I guess that was the end of my thought.
Well, you've been drinking a little bit. I mean,
I think I should have another drink.
So, you know, like with my children, I try to tell people that I don't have a favorite. But, you know, out of these three, I mean, I've enjoyed all three of them. And it's an interesting progression going from one to the next one to the next one. But I think when I come back, if I have to declare a winner or leader,
what would you say?
I would say it's the 14.
Yeah, me too.
You know, when I go back to the 13, you know, I didn't taste the corn when I first drank it, but now the corn keeps hitting me over the head.
Right.
And this one kind of blends it out, as you said. It takes second fiddle in a good way. So
what I've learned from this, and I agree with you, I would tell you that X14, if I could only drink one of these three and I had to pick it as they are, it would be X14. But my takeaways from this, and my takeaways will be completely obliterated by the feedback that we get from everybody in the surveys at Friday. That's what matters, because I'm not our target customer. The public is, right? I like the smoke aspect. I think that's fun. There might be something there to a little bit of a higher barley content. And it doesn't all have to be smoked or all chocolate, but maybe you add a little bit more in there and see what that does and age that out. I don't know. But the chocolate one's neat. The idea of adding a little scotch, a little pinch of chocolate into a bourbon mash bill, I think is fun. I think this is probably a little bit overly heavy-handed with that chocolate note, but if you could add it so that it's on the back of your palate on tongue, like, there's a little, I almost want to say like chocolatey note to it. That would be a really nice addition to a final bourbon recipe.
Well, and that's the art of it. It's just figuring out the thing. I mean, I think the last one is a nice, for those of you who are able to get a bottle and have it, it would be great fun to put in some sample bottles and give to your friends and say, try to guess what this is.
Sure.
Because it's unique. I'm saying interesting side note, because you're trying all this, you know, I did visit a distillery a while back, and they are actually malting all their own grains, and they've not just malting their own barley, they've malted the corn, malted the rye, which is unique. And
Boys got to have dreams.
I have to tell you that when I tasted the bourbon that was made from all the malted grains, it was the most bizarre thing I've ever had. It's not like I want a bottle of it, but it was so unique and so flavorful and so different that it really opened my eyes to what you're doing in the sense that the changes. So for me, that's what's important. And you know, I'm looking forward to the next quarter. Can you give us a sneak peek of what's coming? Or is that trade secret right now?
I would be happy to if I knew it.
If you knew it, okay. Well, as you said, you kind of taste what works next. But it'll be thematic like this?
That's the idea. And so we've already pulled some of them. We've got several pallets of bottles that we've pulled because they were done aging to our liking. But I have to go through and see what we have enough to schedule out October, November, December.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I truly appreciate you, one, for inviting Bourbon and Banter along for the ride. And if you haven't seen all the previous reviews, they're all available on our YouTube channel. And there's a playlist where you can view those. They're much shorter than this video. So you can check that out and get an idea of what's going on. If you're interested in this and you can get to St. Louis, because that's kind of a requirement, first Friday of every month, 6:30.
We have awesome cocktails in
right.
our distillery from all of our different spirits from 5 to 10. At 6:30, the free part happens. Everyone's invited.
So
come on out.
6:30, free
Drink.
part, absolutely.
Yep.
It's a great time. He gets a great crowd down to the event. You try it out, and as he said, if a release doesn't sell out, it will be available the next first Friday.
Yeah.
So
we only sample the release that we're doing that month,
right.
but as long as we have bottles available, those are all for sale.
Well, they've watched our reviews, so
Yep.
they know which ones they should try
Exactly.
to collect, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, and we definitely look forward to the next quarter, hopefully coming down to the distillery and checking
Can I
it
add
out.
one more thing?
Oh, absolutely.
So the fourth quarter, being the fourth quarter of the year, October, November, and December, we've got some other special things coming out.
Okay.
So the experimental series is there. In October, we'll be releasing our first batch of apple brandy, which was X4. People really, that was thunderous applause and thumbs up, so we ended up scaling it up. We'll have our first batch of that, very small batch, coming out in October. November will be our big time bourbon, Monon Bell, and in December we'll have our double barrel Rally Point. Those are all released on the first Fridays. You come down for the experimental, you get to try those too.
Excellent. Well, the brandy in the experimental collection was good. The bourbon is good.
That's just your opinion,
but
Pops.
the rye is one of my favorites. So if you are into ryes, definitely try to get here in town, check it out. And if you make the effort to get to St. Louis, drop Bourbon and Banter note.
Yeah.
We're glad to meet up, and maybe we'll get him to open something special. We don't know. We can't make any promises. But
Won't happen if you're not here.
Well, there you go. Very good. Well, Dave, as always, thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers, sir. Stay curious.
Just drink curious.
Stay curious and then drink curious. I thought I had that one.
That's right.
I was really proud of it. I was patting myself on the back.
We'll fade out on the